Hungarian Folk Tales. King Kitty. Once upon a time there lived a poor old woman, and she had a cat. The cat was so greedy that he poked his nose into every jug and jar. Then the day came when the old woman could not stand the cat's greedy ways any longer, and she said to him, "Get out of my house. You may go wherever you like, but never darken my door again." So the greedy cat was forced to go out into the wide world. The cat walked until he came to a bridge, where he sat and gave a sad meow. And as he sat, he caught sight of a fox sitting nearby. The cat prowled slowly around the fox and rustled the bushes. The fox was terrified, as he had never seen a cat before, and the cat was terrified because he had never seen a fox before, so they both just stood there shaking. Which of us should be in charge? What? You don't know who I am? I'm King Kitty. All the animals are afraid of me. Oh, I am ashamed to say that I have never heard of you before, the fox confessed, and immediately invited King Kitty to his humble home for a sumptuous supper of chicken, duck, goose, and anything else he could find. "Please eat more, Your Majesty. Make yourself at home." When the feast was finished, the fox prepared an exceptionally soft bed for King Kitty, who ordered complete silence while he had his royal nap. "Get away from here! Don't you know that King Kitty is sleeping in my house? If you wake him now, he's sure to have you executed." "Where are you running to? Are the hounds on your tail?" "Don't ask me, Bear. I was passing Fox's house and he told me to run away because King Kitty sleeps within, and if I woke him, he'd have me executed." The bear pondered. "I have travelled to many lands, but I have never heard of such a feline figure. I shall pay a visit to the fox and see this King Kitty for myself." "Oh, Bear, please don't go there, because if you wake King Kitty, he'll have you executed and me along with you." This frightened the bear, who ran and ran until he reached the rabbit. "Oh my, what will happen if King Kitty wakes up and walks out into the forest?" "I've got a splendid idea. Let's all invite King Kitty to a banquet." "If you trust me, I'll go to the fox and invite His Majesty." "All right, I'll go to see if King Kitty is awake, and I'll inform him of your wish." "Your Majesty, a crow has arrived sent by the animals of the forest to invite you to a royal banquet." King Kitty brushed his white whiskers and said, "Very well, you may go and tell the crow I will attend." As evening came, King Kitty began to make himself ready. He waxed his whiskers and left in the company of his host the fox. The crow met them to show the way, but the crow was too scared to fly down to the ground, and so instead he flew from tree to tree and called, "This way, please! This way, please!" The other animals soon sighted King Kitty arriving with the fox. "Oh dearie me, here comes King Kitty. He'll skewer me on his spiky whiskers." But all of a sudden the animals took fright and fled to all four corners of the forest. And if these foolish animals had not run away, my story would have lasted longer still. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Pork Pudding. Once upon a time, there lived a man who had a pig. The pig grew very big and fat, so the man decided to slaughter it for food. By the time spring came, the man and his family had eaten everything but the pork pudding. One day, the man went to tend his vines while his wife and 3 daughters stayed at home to cook supper. The wife told the eldest daughter, "Go up into the attic and fetch the pork pudding, my girl, and we'll cook it for your father's supper." The eldest girl did as she was told and was about to cut the pork pudding down when it spoke to her. "What do you want? You won't eat me, because I'll eat you first." And with these words, it ate the girl up. The wife could not imagine why her daughter had not come back down with the pork pudding. So she sent the second eldest daughter up to the attic to fetch it. But the fat pork pudding ate the second daughter up as well. So the wife sent the youngest girl up to fetch the pork pudding. But the youngest daughter did no better than her sisters, and the bulging pork pudding ate her up too. The wife could not imagine what had happened to her 3 darling daughters. "Well, I shall see for myself," she said, and went up into the roof. When she saw the size of the enormous pork pudding, she was pleased. But when she tried to cut the pork pudding down, it ate her up in a single mouthful. That evening, the man returned home from his vines to find no one at home to cook his supper. There was no supper on the stove and not even a fire inside it. The man searched high and low for his wife and 3 daughters. He realized that he would go hungry, so he went up to the attic to fetch the pork pudding to eat for his supper. But when the man got up into the attic and tried to cut the round pork pudding down, it shouted at him like it had at the others, "You won't eat me, I'll eat you first." And without any ado, the pork pudding ate the man up. By now, the heavy pork pudding was so weighty that the string could no longer hold it. It fell from the beam, rolled down the ladder, onto the porch, and out into the garden. The little house was on a big hill, so the gigantic pork pudding rolled all the way down the street. The local folks were just coming back from the fields, and the massive pork pudding ate them all up. The roly-poly pork pudding met a herd of pigs at the edge of the village, being led by a swineherd eating bacon with a pocket knife. The preposterously large pork pudding ate all the pigs up, and then the swineherd too. But the pocket knife was open, and the swineherd cut his way out of the pork pudding, and everybody followed him out into the sunshine. If that pork pudding had not split as it did, my story would have never ended. Hungarian Folk Tales. Only donkeys don't eat the spoon. Once upon a time, beyond the snowy Alps, in the cradle of the Carpathian Mountains, lay the land of Hungary, and there lived a king called Matthias. If the old stories are to be believed, then King Matthias liked to see for himself how his people lived. He dressed in the clothes of a simple beggar and wandered the land, where he spoke to his people as their equal. One day he found himself on a vast plain, where all he could see was the small house of a shepherd. So King Matthias approached the house and greeted the good shepherd. It was the middle of winter, so the shepherd invited the king into his home. The shepherd had no idea that this poor beggar was actually the king of the land. He gave him food for his journey, and the king carved his host's name on his stick before he returned to his royal palace. The shepherd had a trusty black sheepdog. The little dog was so skilled and loyal that it never left the shepherd's feet. King Matthias sent a letter to the shepherd inviting him and his trusty sheepdog to the palace. But the invitation did not explain why he was invited or how to find the king's home. So the shepherd made himself look smart, took his crook in his hand, and set off for the king's royal palace, with his sheepdog by his side. When they reached the city gate, they were met by a guard who said, "Hey, old man, stop here. Where are you going?" "To His Majesty the King." "And with a dog?" "But of course," the shepherd replied. "Here you are. You can see the royal letter that invites us both." The guard read the letter from top to bottom. "Oh, old man, you are sure to be richly rewarded by the king. I shall let you pass if you promise to share the great reward with me." "Well, I don't mind. I promise you that half of the reward will be yours." Then the shepherd reached the castle gate. He tried to enter, but was again stopped by a guard. "Hey, old man, stop here. Where are you going?" "To His Majesty the King." "With a dog?" "Well, I have a letter. Here you are." "You were right. You were both invited." But then the guard remembered that there was a banquet inside the palace. The king had called together all the important men in his kingdom. The king obviously wanted to reward the lowly shepherd in front of these rich men, but also planned to play a joke on the old man first. The second guard said, "Old man, you are going to get a great reward. I shall let you pass if you give me half of that reward." "All right, I will give you half of it." So he would give one half to this one, and he had promised to give the other half to the other one, so that would leave him with nothing, wouldn't it? The old shepherd walked into the palace. The king and his courtiers were already seated around the large table. The servants had set places for them all with a bowl, spoon, knife and a fork in front of everyone except the shepherd, who had been given no spoon. The soup was served and everyone helped himself. The first, of course, was His Majesty King Matthias, who raised his spoon and said, "Dear sirs, only donkeys don't eat soup." Everyone took his spoon. The shepherd tried to take his one too, but he had none. "Oh dear, I shall be the donkey now because I cannot eat my soup. I cannot eat soup with either a fork or a knife." But this was not the first time that a poor man had to eat soup without a spoon. The old shepherd simply cut the end off his bread and hollowed it out. The crispy crust made the perfect spoon for eating soup, and he sat and ate every last drop, watched by all the important guests and the king. "Your Majesty said that only donkeys don't eat soup. Well, let me add that only donkeys don't eat their spoon." And the old shepherd gobbled up his soup-soaked spoon in one. The banquet eventually ended and the time came for the king to hand out rewards. And you will never believe what the old shepherd asked for. "Your Majesty, I would like 50 strokes of the stick." "Shepherd, I haven't invited you to beat you 50 times with a stick. I wanted to play a practical joke on you, but you played the joke on me. Therefore, you deserve more than 50 strokes. Tell me now what I owe you." "Your Majesty, you owe me nothing more than 50 strokes. That's all I want." Then the king understood that it had been a joke again. "Very well then, but tell me now why." "Why? The reason is very simple. On my way here I was stopped by a guard at the city gate who refused to let me in unless he could share half of my reward. Then a second guard only let me enter the palace if he too could receive half of my reward. So now one will receive 25 strokes of the stick, and so will the second." And so the shepherd's joke was ended.